Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. I don't know many people who go into marriage expecting to divorce, but we know that it does happen. Some think it is the easy way out to avoid responsibility, having to change their habits, or having to accommodate the needs of someone else. For others, the decision to divorce might just be a matter of life and death, if not literally, then certainly figuratively. Because even if you can just survive or get by in a quote, miserable marriage, your spirit can die. Your dreams can die. No matter how you slice it, and no matter how amicable you try to make it, a divorce does mark the end of a certain kind of connection with your partner. And even if you are convinced that it is the right choice for you, it is a difficult choice. And for parents, it can be even more complicated and heartbreaking as parents consider the impact that the split will have on their children. My guest today knows all of this all too well. Today, Marie Mosley is a guidance counselor and is passionate about supporting her students through challenging transitions that they face. As a mom of four, she's had to guide her own children through the transition of her own divorce. She has written about her experience in her new book entitled The Pretty Divorce: How to Sever a Toxic Union and Create an Illuminated Future. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, Marie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Carol.
Yes, I believe you have a powerful story, and I know that people listening will certainly be inspired and informed. So why don't you just start off and tell us a bit about your journey to motherhood and then ultimately to marriage?
Wow, my journey with motherhood started when I was 14 years old. I had gone through a very traumatic childhood, losing my dad, and at 12, I lost my sister and my niece, both to a terrible incident. And the following year, I was in that summer that they passed away. I started middle school that next September. Maybe a week or two after I buried my sister, I had to start middle school. And I just really believe now, as I'm older, I just believe that I was out of sorts. You know, I was in a lot of pain. I was like, it was very horrific, the situation that took place. So I really wasn't thinking straight. You know, I was dealing with a lot of just trying to figure out life. I was trying to find my way, and my mom had lost her daughter and her first grandchild. So no one really did anything to help me, you know, and I just have to be honest about that. I love my family. I think they're great, but I've come to the conclusion, because I am a counselor and because I study stuff like behavior and mental health, I just believe that everybody was out of sorts, and everybody was trying to figure out how would they recover from what our family just went through. Mm-hmm. So without too many eyes on me or people paying attention or keeping tabs on me, I got involved with a young man from my school, and due to peer pressure. And we don't talk about peer pressure a lot these days. We used to talk about it a lot years ago, but I still do believe peer pressure goes on for adults even. But that's a whole nother topic. But through a lot of peer pressure, and I gave in, and I became pregnant at 13 years old. And I gave birth to my daughter 13 days after I turned 14. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that began my journey as a parent. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Me and this person, go ahead.
Well, no, all I was going to say is, and I hope that people, after our conversation, that people will really check out your book. I mean, because you give a lot more detail. I mean, you really did. I can certainly agree with you that you had some challenges there. Just that you just wouldn't expect one family to experience in such a in a lifetime, but certainly over such a close period of time. And everybody just sounds like they were doing the best they could
Yeah.
do to get through the situation. Like I wouldn't even say it was like a thing of neglect, even, you know what I
Mm.
mean? It
Um,
just was trying to just to get by,
yeah.
to go to school, to go to work, make sure you were safe, had a safe place to live, and all of that, and you were cared for at home. And just sometimes parents just aren't able to see. Well, you can't see what's going on inside in the heart and in the mind sometimes when family tragedies happen. So, that brings me to the next thing I wanted to say is that it's really commendable that you were able to continue on with your education, because certainly that those experiences, any one of those experiences, could set you back, could have set
Mhm.
you back, and you were able to continue on with your education. I mean, through college and graduate school, and ultimately become a guidance counselor, where you're able to support other children that probably could have that probably need the same kind of help that you could have used. And I just think that that's just how God works.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I have a mentor that says your experience, your story happens to you, but it's not always just for you.
Mhm.
You're going to use it to share with other people and help them in their journey in life. So how were you able to, like, even starting in middle school and going on through high school, how was it that you were able to have your child but continue to go to school and just do all the right things?
My sister, my sister is my rock, and even with my mom, she passed on, but my sister, she's always been my rock. She doesn't have children, and I'm the baby of the family, so I'm pretty much as close as she's gotten to a child. And with my dad not being in the picture, she really stepped in to help out financially, emotionally as much as possible. And she was the first person that I spoke to about it. She was the first person I spoke to. And she asked me, what do you want to do? Whatever you want to do, I'm with you. I just want you to know that should you decide to have this baby, you are going to school. You're not, like, that was the biggest thing in my family. My mom pushed education, and my sister was right behind her. You're not going to at the time she had just finished her degree at John Jay College here in New York. And she was like, you're going to have to finish school. So if I have to pay for daycare, whatever you have to do, you're going to school. So I went to high school. I went to a regular high school. And then after 2 years in high school, I switched to another high school that it's an alternative school in New York City.
Mhm.
And back then, they had two sections of the school. One section was for pregnant teens, and the other section was regular school, but you can bring your child to school. They had a daycare center. So I
Mm.
attended that school for a little while. But being a parent, it was a lot on me. I had, things to do. I didn't really have time to waste. So I left school. I got a GED. But I passed the GED test when I was 17. And in New York, you can't, they don't allow you to get the certification until you're 19 years old. So I passed the GED, but I had to wait till 19. And then once I got my GED, I started making plans to go back to college and things of that nature. Well, I always knew that I would graduate college. Like I tell people in the book, believe it or not, I had a plan when I was like fourth and fifth grade. I had a plan. I knew I would go to school. I knew what I wanted to be. And, I got detoured a little bit, but I went back to school, and that's what you said was key about it wasn't neglect. I never felt neglected by my family. Because as soon as everything happened, everybody kicked in and did what they had to do to see me and my daughter through, to make sure that, I went to school and I was clothed. I've never been homeless. I've never been hungry, and so I know a lot of people don't have that testimony, but it's mine, and I'm grateful for my family. They really did step up and help me out a lot to make sure that I was able to finish school and become something, and that I wouldn't be a statistic. And that was my biggest thing. I did not want to be a statistic.
Yes. And, that was very clear, your support system, just reading your story. And then also it was also clear because, as you said, you always had this vision. You had a plan, even as a young child, about what you were going to do. And you can just see, reading your story, you could just see that foundation that your family had already poured into you before things started to happen. As when you became 13 years old and you became pregnant and all of that, there was already such a good foundation there. That's a blessing because, as you said, a lot of young people out here that may find themselves in a similar situation to yourself, they don't have that. And it's a struggle. And it's something that school systems, like, for example, your school system up in New York, recognizing this, having alternative high schools and programs to accommodate students. That's really important. And then, of course, the mental health professionals in the schools. I mean, because young people are dealing with so much today. Now, tell our listeners what your definition is of a pretty divorce, because a lot of folks don't think of a divorce being pretty. So what did you mean? We'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
So Pretty Divorce, it developed into a concept, it more so than just me saying, oh, divorce is pretty. It's more about the outcome. It's more about the outcome of the divorce. It does not, my divorce wasn't nice. It wasn't amicable. We didn't part really nicely, but what I got out of it was pretty for me. I got peace. As a teenager, I know you read the book, that I was suicidal. I got into drugs and alcohol. And so when I came out of it, all of that was gone for me. Mm-hmm. That's what, and so a pretty divorce is really different for everybody else. A woman that's being abused physically and she comes out of the marriage, she doesn't have to suffer that type of abuse anymore, so that's that. So it's all about what you make of it. It's your own concept. We all have things that are not good in our lives that we can divorce ourselves from. Mm-hmm. Divorce, when you look up the word, it talks about marriage, but it also just talks about you separating yourself from something. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be you divorcing yourself from a person. It also can mean you divorcing yourself from alcohol, from drugs, from toxicity, from friends that are not good for you. different things. So it just became a concept for me because I was in a really dark place in that relationship, really dark place. And I was doing what I had to do or could do to survive. And once I came out of it, I felt stable. I felt better mentally. I found joy. I was like happy. I got to rebuild a whole new relationship with my children because we were all we had at the time. We had my family still, but in my unit of family, I had to be mom and help them through all of this. So we rebuilt relationships with one another. With my daughters, my first two daughters, their father, I didn't write this in the book, but their father did a lot to draw wedges between them. And they have a phenomenal relationship right now. They're raising their boys together. So it's just, so that's what's pretty about it for me. It was something I needed in my life. And I was able, I have a wonderful husband now. My career, I wrote a book, so it just opened up a lot of benefits for me, rather than it being so dark or what people put on it. I think it's all about perspective.
Right. And it became pretty afterwards. Your future became bright and pretty
Yes.
after that. Not only your future, but your present, what you were living in after the divorce. It was beautiful. It was pretty. And I like what you talk about, like in that diagram that you have in your book on page 78. People, you're going to have to get the book if you want to know what I'm talking about. But where you kind of talked about the entanglements and then on the other side, the freedom. And that really gets to what you're talking about in terms of the definition of divorce, which does mean separating from something. I mean, of course, we always think about it in terms of marriage, but it is also a breaking away or moving away from something. It doesn't have to be a marriage, basically. So now, how were you able to finally see that? Because it's hard, and that's what I love about what you share in the book. It's hard, even when you have an idea that you should get a divorce, you should get out of the situation. It can take a long time. Like I read in another book where a mother told her daughter, because the daughter was thinking about divorce, and she was talking about, the mom was sharing her own experience with divorce, and she said, after you have the first thought, it can take you 3 to 5 years to even do anything about it. So how were you finally able, I mean, I want you to share with the listeners, but like some of what you talk about in the book about how you were able to finally break through, because there was some back and forth, like, okay, yeah, let's split up. Okay, no, let's try it one more time. Let's whatever. How were you able to just finally break through? Like you saw on the other side what maybe there was some light on the other side, and you're just going to try to cross over and try to get there.
So, I as in the book, I met the Lord. I love the Lord, and my life started to take on a whole new turn. Like I started to have so much joy, and that's where I was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel at first. But he wasn't changing. I was making changes, and I was growing more, and I was in the word, and I was feeling really good about life, but he wasn't changing. And so when I talk about on the diagram, those entanglements, they can be infidelity, it can be, whatever a person's entanglements are, infidelity was a part of our entanglements. And what ended up happening is I moved to Florida to start over. He followed me to Florida because it seemed like every time I was doing well and getting my life together, here he came. And he came with the sob story of, I'm sorry, we got to work this out. This is for our family, the kids, because he knew I didn't have a father. So it meant the world for me, for my kids to have their father in their lives. So more kind of manipulation, to get back in the door. And so while we were in Florida, him being a truck driver, he was always gone a lot, coming back and forth. And every time he came home, he wanted to be intimate. But I'd end up with a yeast infection. But I'm thinking that it's me. But after the second and third time, I'm realizing that this is happening a few days right after I'm with him. So I'm nervous about what it could be. I know there's been infidelity in the past. I'm not searching for it, so I don't know if it exists, it does it exist or whatever. So I'm going to the doctor, and she explains to me about men being able to carry a bacteria and transfer it. But she's told me that he's having unprotected sex with someone else. That's how it's happening. And in that moment, I was very much infuriated. I was infuriated. I was nervous. I was scared. I was like, what if this had been something that wasn't a yeast infection? And then I felt like that was the first time, regardless of all the suicidal thoughts as a teenager, I felt my life was on the line. We were smack dab in the heart of the AIDS epidemic, where people were, a lot of women of color were passing away from it. And I that was it for me. That was really the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I kind of dabbled back and forth a little bit, but it wasn't as it was before, where I fully went into it and allowed him to come back and all that. I still was having a little bit of struggle, but I was more 90% out of it than I was, in. And so but after that, when I thought about my life being in jeopardy, I couldn't do it anymore, because he didn't care about his life, my life, whoever's life he was with or whatever. But I wasn't willing to die, because at that point, like I said, I knew the Lord. I was not, I wasn't sleeping around with anybody. I never really was that person, but I was thinking about all the stuff that I was doing to live my life right. But I wasn't willing to let him drag me back, because I was very angry. I was angry to the point that I wanted to hurt him. And I say, he's dragging me backward. Like I keep taking 2 steps forward and I get dragged 10 steps back. The only way for me to really do this is to stop. I have to stop. I can't worry about the kids. Then I started to think about the damage I was doing to the kids by staying in the relationship. And it wasn't okay for me anymore. So I packed up, I left and went back home to New York, and started a whole new life from there. Got a job here and started working as a guidance counselor here, and just, but that was really it for me when I was afraid for my life, that he didn't care about what could happen to me in that process.
So how did you support your children during that time? I mean, emotionally and all. How, especially when you made the move back to New York, certainly you've moved away from him, you've moved back to something familiar, but it still takes time to process all of that, especially for young children. How did you help them do that?
So my kids were always involved a lot in school, in plays, step class, football, all kind of cheerleading. So I just really put them in a lot of extracurricular activities, so they'd have something to occupy their minds. I will say I'm very honest with whomever, even with my children, and I had to have very serious talks with them. And I didn't try to make them choose a side. I just had to help them understand that for me, this wasn't okay. And I couldn't stay involved in this any longer because it was hurting me. I didn't go into detail about, the cheating and the what and all of that stuff. But I did tell them, this is not working for me. And something I left out of the book is he took my daughter around some woman. And my daughter called me. He took her, this was while we were in Florida. He took her, and my daughter called me, and she was crying, and she was like, I don't know who this woman is, and these kids are here, and one of these kids are saying she's my sister. So my daughter, so his stuff he didn't really hide his stuff from the kids. Like, he let them see. So I didn't have to do anything to kind of destroy his image. He was doing that on his own. So I just became a major, so I supported them even more than I did before all of this happened. I just made sure that I engaged in their life. I made everything about us. I didn't try to get into a new relationship. I didn't try to get a new man, anything like that. I made everything about me and my children, us doing things together, us starting new traditions together, us supporting one another. If somebody had something, we all went to it, wherever it was. If my daughter was in college, my son was in school, we all just supported each other, came together as a unit. And there was a lot of time, a lot of crying, a lot of, hurt feelings, but all I could do is just be their support system like my mom did for me. And it worked. I talk about that in the book as well, because when I sit with kids, a lot of the kids I sit with will say, like, my mom and dad broke up, and now my mom goes out, 3-4 times a week, and she's always out with her friends, and I'm at home, with my siblings. And it's just, and I understand it. I get it. As women, we want to feel better. We want to try to do things to ease our pain and our hurts. But when we do that to our children, we create problems, more issues for them. I feel like if we took them through this journey on this relationship we were in this marriage and in this divorce, then it's our job to take them all the way. Let's heal together, instead of I'm gonna get myself together, and once I'm all right, I'll come back for you. By the time you make it back, those kids are very much damaged, and those are the kids that say, no one loves me, it's my fault, I lost my father, my mom is gone, they both got 2 new lives, and it doesn't include me. I didn't want to do that to my children. I didn't want them to feel abandoned both ways, from their father and from me. So I just spent a lot of time with them and made sure we were having fun together. Like I said, creating new traditions. We did different things. We went because we used to go out to eat a lot, do a lot of things. We found new places to eat. I just wanted to step away from everything that included him. What I was doing with the children. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. You described a lot of things, because I was going to ask you some ideas for parents who are experiencing this and how to help their children through. And you certainly named a lot of ways that parents can help to ease the pain, the transition, and how to stay connected with them. So I wonder then, what can educators do to help children that they see or suspect are going through a difficult situation at home?
We'll be right back after this.
As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork.
And we're back with the Parenting 411.
So I say in the book that parents need to utilize their counselors. Counselors are really, 9 out of 10 counselors don't get into the job unless they absolutely have a love for children. So sometimes it is good for you to speak to the teachers, let teachers know what's going on. Because if teachers don't know, they expect kids' behavior that they're just acting out. They're just acting out or whatever. So sometimes it is good for you to have those conversations, especially with the counselor. Because even if you don't have that conversation with the teacher, the counselor is the support system in the school. And that, well, I know for me, because most of the time the things that shared with counselors is confidential. So without telling teachers all of the story or all of that child's business, I simply say, listen, there's things going on. I've already met with the mom, and if you have a good rapport with your counselor, you'll take her advice on, or his advice on, give that child a little bit of a break. And I'm working with him. If the counselor's already working with a student, teachers know there's something going on. There's mandatory counseling, and then there's at-risk counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And if your child is going through stuff because of divorce or whatever's going on at home, they're at risk.
Mm-hmm.
They're considered at risk. And the counselor's job is to see that child and help them through that situation. So I tell, and another thing I did, my son was in football, and I spoke to his coaches, and I told them, because my son was really shut down and he didn't want to do anything. He was like trying to just quit at everything. And I was like, you're not quitting. My new husband, he was like, he's not quitting this. He's quit every sport you put him in. And before you knew it, the coaches became a part of my support system. So I kind of started building my own support system by seeking out, like you said, the school staff, his coaches, and we all together came, we all in every area. When he went to school, his teachers were aware, his counselor was aware. They knew what he was going through. So they support him there. He go out on the football field, they supported him there. He came home, he had support. So it ended up building. I mean, my son's coaches, they can call me today and I'd do anything for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I watched them help him because they were men. I watched them help him transform and come back to himself, before all of the divorce, before his father's abandonment, before all of that. The kid that was smiling and bright and always happy, and so I kind of built my own support team, and you can, your support system or whatever, you can do that for your children. That, if you find that there's certain people in the school, like if there's one teacher that your kid talks about all the time, and it's like, oh, I love so-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, it's nice to have a conversation with that teacher. Listen, this is the things that we've gone through. You don't have to expose your whole life to people, but you can say, because everybody knows that divorce, separation, all of these things are hard on all people involved. And I don't know if you read about the ACEs.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that's really, really big to me, that I try to educate parents on, that because divorce is one of the ACEs.
And tell them what ACEs stands for.
So ACEs stands for adverse childhood experiences. And these are experiences that happen below from like birth to maybe like between 16 and 18 years old. Depending on which research you're doing, they'll give different numbers. But so the ACEs are these adverse childhood experiences, like divorce, having a parent that commits suicide, having a parent that's an alcoholic or drug addict, domestic violence. The CDC just added poverty to the list of ACEs. So, and the ACEs affect the neurobiology of your brain and how it's developed. We have a fight and flight within us. ACEs keep you in fight mode all the time. So when you see kids that are defensive, they don't think before they do things, you know, they kind of just just jump at somebody. All of these are descriptions of kids that might be suffering from having some type of neurobiology going on in their brain, shifting their brain from feeling safe and feeling, you know, stable. So the best way to deal with ACEs is to be supportive. They have to feel, kids need to feel safe. They need to feel that their world makes sense. And divorce completely shifts and turns their world upside down.
Right.
Regardless whether they're in a house where there's arguments, that's going to affect them. But when that separation comes, it does a whole other job on children, and it flips their world inside out, making them feel completely unsafe, not stable, you know, confused as to what's happening in their lives. And so it starts to affect the way their brains are developing. So that's why I try to help a lot of parents understand that you are important to these kids. I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting and you want to go out there and figure out ways to stop your pain, but you have to find some way to simultaneously help both of you and your child. Not just, it can't just be about you.
So what would you say would be a final word that you would offer to a mother who, again, is thinking this might be a situation I'm going to have to leave, but just can't quite make the decision? What is a final word that you'd offer to encourage?
So what I would offer is, we know if this, because some marriages don't have to end. You know, some marriages can go through counseling. You know, if you got a pastor you can talk to, you know, something to that effect. What I don't want to do as I'm going around speaking about this, I don't want people to feel like I'm pushing people to end their marriages. But if you know that you're in a very toxic situation that's unhealthy for you and your children, and you have to leave, it's time to start formulating a plan of action, because some women can't just leave and be okay. You know, they have to figure out what resources they have. Like, am I going to stay with my mom, or, you know, me and my children going to stay with my mom? How am I going to be able to live financially? So they just really have to start mapping out their plan of action and what they're going to need to do to move forward. Because if you don't have anywhere to go, it's really hard. It's really hard for people to leave. But if it's a dangerous situation, and you know what? Each state is different. So it ends up being difficult for me to speak to everybody as a whole, because New York City has shelters and they've done a little bit of building up for the shelters for mothers and children, right? So some of the places are really, really nice. But when you go to Florida, because I work there, they don't have all of these resources for women. You know, when I first got there, I would tell women, oh, just go here and do this. And they're like, no, it doesn't work like that here. They don't have those same resources. So the most important thing is to find out what type of resources your state offers to people coming, you know, to mothers moving out with children, if there's some place you can go, or if you don't have family. So, you know, it's just all based on your individual situation. Find out what resources you have that's going to assist you with making this move.
Okay. So what's next for you and the Pretty Divorce? What's next?
I'm currently building out my coaching program.
Okay.
I'm excited about it. I'm nervous and I'm excited at the same time. But what I did was I built it out based off of most of what I wrote in the book.
Okay. Okay.
So I've taken not each chapter, but a few of the chapters and then just built it out strictly based on the way the book is written and how I went through my journey to get to where I am. So I'm building it out that way.
Okay.
And yeah, so before the beginning of the year, I should be launching.
Very good. Very good. I know that there are people out there that can benefit from this. Your story and certainly what you learned along the way. Maybe that can shorten their timeline for getting out there and doing what they need to do. So, how can listeners follow up with you, learn more about you on social media, website, any of that?
I am on Instagram as marie.d.mosley. The book is at theprettydivorce.com and on all other social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I believe Twitter, I'm Marie Mosley.
Okay. Okay. Well, I thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Kat. No, I want to thank you. I really appreciate it because I honestly feel like you read the book and you get it. Because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to help women not waste time because I've wasted it for them. And I really appreciate you. You're the first person that asked for the book. Yeah, like so we were able to have a better conversation because you actually read it. So I appreciate it.
Yes, and I appreciate you telling this story. I mean, my parents were divorced when I was 11 years old, and so I certainly know what it feels like to be on that end of it, being a child of divorce. And then I'm a married person now, so I know about marriage and the challenges that you can have and what you're trying to provide for your children. So I definitely was really wanted to know more about your story. And I love the way you told the story. It's not just the facts. Oh, I went to this office, I signed this form, and I did this and that. But just sharing a little bit about what you were thinking, how you were processing what was happening to you, what was happening to your family, and all of that. I think that is all beneficial for women to read this book because then they can kind of imagine what their child is thinking emotionally and all of that, and also just see the importance of connecting and really working as a family to get through the challenge. So thank you again for spending time with me. And for listeners, as usual, I'm so glad that you've spent this time with us today. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Share this episode because I'm quite sure there's someone in your circle. If it's not directly in your circle, they know someone that is having, might be having some challenges, might be contemplating divorce. Maybe, as Marie said, maybe divorce won't be the solution. Maybe there's something else they can do. But if it is, then I think hopefully this gives them the courage to explore their options, and especially when they want to look out for what's best for themselves and for their children. And so, as always, thank you for tuning in. And remember that it is never too late to be the parent that you want to be.
Amen.